All right, unpopular thoughts about this Cheyenne Bryant situation. There are several things here that I think people need to think about and consider. As somebody who is educated, master's degree in community health and prevention science, um, I'm working on my second master's degree. I deeply care about community health and how individuals are receiving health messages. And here's the thing, with this particular situation, I think we are, or people are, going so crazy about this woman's credentials, but forgetting that the majority of the entertainment industry has this sort of thing where people are finessing, they are completely embellishing their credentials. We've seen Dr. Phil. We've seen talk show hosts really try to attempt to do therapy, and they are not licensed, and they do not have a doctorate, and they are not educated in the way that a licensed mental health professional is. And so, yes, I understand that the big issue here is that it gives a false message. Some people feel like it discredits them and the hard work that they've put in. But the reality is, zooming out, she's an entertainer. That's it. Right? Like this is an entertainer. This is somebody who, has built a platform because of the way that she speaks. She is able to attract a lot of people to her message, even though most of the message is invalid. But she's an entertainer. Like, there are people consuming that content, right? I'm not saying that it's a good thing. I'm not saying that it's right. I'm definitely not saying that it's healthy, because I would argue that most of it is not. I think that there's a lot of things that she says are problematic. But I also recognize that she's an entertainer. I am not basing my whole life off of what this woman is saying. I am not getting mental health advice from an entertainer. And I think that's a big thing that, people need to start really looking at and unpacking, because why are we putting so much emphasis on, oh, she doesn't have a degree, but there's an entire world of people that are consuming content from not only her, but people like her, right? Believing that they're getting mental health support or they're getting therapy. That's a problem, because that's not it. Like, we should not be doing that. We should be actively seeking mental health support. Now, those of us who come from vulnerable populations, or who come from low income communities and don't know how to navigate getting a mental health professional, or do not have really that option, because it makes it extremely difficult if you have state insurance. Sometimes they want to set an appointment with you a year out, as if that makes any sense. You should not be going on social media for your healing. You need to go to a community resource, find a community resource that can connect you into the proper channels to get your mental health support, therapy, actual therapy from a licensed mental health professional, not some sort of gimmick, not, it's by a book, not it's let me go watch Homegirl's podcast or watch her on these podcasts. I think that people actually have a gift of discernment and can also tell what's real versus what's not. What's raggedy information was not legitimate information versus what is really helpful and applicable to your life, right? And so I think there is this other narrative that's kind of going around that makes it like, her audience is completely, like they're just victims, and they're blindly consuming this stuff. And I would argue that that's not the case. I think people have discernment. I think some people chew the meat and spit out the bones. Again, I am not a fan. I think that, as a married woman, I've been married for 6 years. I love every bit of my husband, and I can tell you from lived experience that her rhetoric does not match reality. It's not. I think a lot of it is her hopes and dreams and what she believes marriage is, right? She's living in a fantasy, and I think that she takes those fantasies and tries to translate them to her fan base, and it becomes this cycle, and you all are feeding each other, right? It's her and you on these fanciful ideas about what marriage is, and unfortunately that ain't it, right? So there's a couple of issues here. Like I said, there is the rhetoric, right, and taking that as gospel. Well, you don't have to do that, right? Like, and I think most people know, nah, I'm just gonna chew the meat, spit out the bones. She was, off for saying this, but I do kind of agree with this because I like her delivery of this message, right? There are little things that she does say that, resonates. But again, she's an entertainer. Entertainer. That's it. The other thing is, when it comes to working with a licensed mental health professional, if you're seeking actual true therapy, then do that in a legitimate way, right? Like, obviously you don't go to social media for that. Go to a medical health professional if you're able to, all right, and if you can afford it, and if your insurance offers that option, which most insurance does. And so those are my two thoughts about this. I do want to throw this in there and take with it what you will, but I would argue that discernment is the biggest thing here that people need. Why? Because there are licensed mental health professionals who have all the degrees, the doctorates, and whatever you want to call it, and they're raggedy. They're raggedy. I know this from firsthand experience. I have, had a couple of therapists that I worked with that I had to let go because I'm like, you don't understand really what I'm going through. I've had these particular situations happen, and your response tells me that you don't understand. And even when I try to explain it to you, you're still you didn't take any notes and you don't remember. Like, I think that's a problem. There's some shabby practices, right? Like, there are people, just they have all these fancy degrees and they have all this book knowledge, right? But then when it really comes down to the applied stuff, they don't know what they're doing, or they don't care. That's the worst part, right? So I think people are drawn to maybe her passion, and they're drawn to the message, and other things, right? Some other things that you all have claimed. But I think the bigger picture here is people need to use their own discernment and their own wisdom to determine where they're going to get their therapy from, and really to not be relying on social media. Let's not completely blame and put the focus on social media entertainers, right? They're going to make content, people are going to consume that content. That's reality. Yes, absolutely, getting your degrees, getting your certifications and your licenses is very, very important. People need to seek that, need to seek qualified professionals for their mental health, but also use discernment in that area as well. Those are my thoughts. Discernment, discernment, discernment.